So this is a difficult video to make, and I've been rolling over in my head how to put it all together. The accident between Hubert and Korea in Spa has been extremely hard for most of us to process, and I spent most of the weekend in some kind of denial that it was even true. So what we're going to do today is look over the accident in very broad strokes. There will be no footage, no screen caps or photos, or even animation. Instead, I'm just going to use still illustrations sparingly to lightly touch on the chain of events that occurred. I decided that to a lot of people it's important to try and have some clarity over what happened, to process and understand the accident by making some sense of it. And most of us would rather do that without seeking out footage of the crash and having to see such a terrible thing with our own eyes. That said, if you don't want to go into it at all, that's totally fair, and I'd advise you to miss this video. There is of course a proper FIA and legal investigation ongoing which will seek out as much information as possible on what happened and draw conclusions over how it happened and where we go from here. This video is more a light touch than that, and I'd ask you not to try and form too strong opinions from it until the official report has come to light and more evidence is forthcoming. I'll also be reflecting on how we feel about safety in motorsport and considering the questions we need to ask from here. So let's go through what actually happened. The accident took place at the beginning of lap 2 of the F2 feature race. As the race had only just started, the cars were still fairly close together, the field not yet particularly spread. As the cars approached the Eau Rouge complex, and I will just be calling it Eau Rouge for simplicity, let's not do that joke today. A train of cars in the midfield were Giuliano Alesi in 10th, followed by Ralph Boschung, Anthoine Hubert, and Juan Manuel Correa. One of the reasons Eau Rouge is such a tricky series of corners is that, as well as being a flat-out left-right-left, its elevation also changes, with the cars diving down into the first left-hander, then rising steeply up through the right, then levelling out again through the left. This means the cars gain a lot of mechanical downforce as the track pitches upwards, and loses mechanical downforce as the track levels out again. This is very similar to how you feel heavier in an elevator as it starts to ascend, but you feel light as it starts to descend. Vertical acceleration and deceleration adds and subtracts the downforce levels. So as you're driving flat out through a very fast set of S's, the grip level of the car is also changing beneath you, and you, as a driver, need to respond very acutely to the car's feel and behaviour. That's part of what makes Eau Rouge so challenging. So Alesi loses control of his car through the middle of Eau Rouge and spins wide from the right-hander, glances the tyre wall on the outside, and starts to skip back towards the track as the left-hander bends to meet him. Behind him, anticipating Alesi's trajectory, Boschung slows at the top of the hill and moves right into the runoff area. Unfortunately, Anthoine Hubert behind is a little unsighted coming over the crest of the hill and gets caught out by Boschung. He makes an emergency move to the right, but glances the back of Boschung's Trident. Now just a passenger, Hubert sails at an acute angle into the tyre barrier on the far side of the fairly narrow runoff area. The tyre barrier, catching Hubert at an angle, decelerates his car quickly and throws him into a spin. This leaves Hubert turned at almost a standstill but pointed across the runoff area. Unfortunately, behind him, Juan Manuel Correa has also taken avoiding action across the runoff area, and his high-speed path is suddenly and surprisingly blocked by Hubert. This results in Correa's car T-boning Hubert's Arden at high relative speed, and the rest we know. A couple of points to mention up front, as I've seen some misconceptions floating about. At no point does Hubert's car bounce back onto the track before his collision with Correa. His initial crash with the barrier leaves him entirely within the runoff area. I noticed some people thinking he was reflected back out onto the track, but that didn't happen. All of his accidents were inside the runoff. A second point to bear in mind is that Hubert's car was side impacted twice. It took the impact from the barrier on the right, it then took impact from Correa on the left, and technically it took another hit from the barrier on the right hand side after taking that hit from Correa. Crash structures are only really designed to take one hit. That's kind of the point of them. They're designed to break and deform in such a way that takes a lot of the energy out of the impact, reducing deceleration through the car and ultimately on the driver. Once the impact structure has been deformed, it's basically done all the work it can do, so you really don't want it to hit the same place twice. Now, it's absolutely not my place to say if this was a failure of safety, if the runoff should have been gravel or something different, or whether the F2 chassis are safe enough. I don't have the data for that, and that's up to the FIA to investigate, and I fully expect them to do it thoroughly. The FIA do not take half measures when it comes to safety. You may ask, is Eau Rouge safe? And that prompts further questions like, what does that mean exactly? Motorsport in general is never entirely without risk, and Eau Rouge is more dangerous than others due to its high speed, tricky elevation and short runoffs. But is it acceptably safe? Are the likely risks within acceptable parameters? There's no right answer to this, especially right now, in the same way that any team or athlete approaches an activity such as racing, rafting, climbing, and so on. I think a lot of work has been done to keep the thrill, challenge, and character of Eau Rouge while reducing the likelihood of a terrible outcome. Unfortunately, being a track out in the wilds of Belgium, the geography doesn't really allow for much more to be done about the runoffs. There's heavy banking on the left-hand side behind the tie barrier here, and in the runoff on the outside on top of the hill, the barrier really is as far back as it can be. Just beyond it is a steep drop, so we really are boxed in here and working with what we've got. I'm not going to go into whether gravel would help. I have another video on the pros and cons of different types of runoff area, and even if gravel would have helped during this particular accident, it may cause more overall risks for other types of accidents. There's no perfect answer here, and the FIA continue to try and find the best overall solutions. It is a fact that we marvel and awe at the risks that drivers take in competition, and that's very much all part of the spectacle. And most of us have enjoyed motorsport through an era where death or very serious injury has barely been part of the landscape. Drivers get up and walk away from even the fiercest looking crashes. That's what we're used to, and that is a good thing, of course. Coming face to face with the very worst possible outcome makes us ask questions like, how safe is safe enough? Serious accidents like these always lead to some kind of reform. The Formula 2 accident appeared to be an unlucky chain of events that led to precisely the worst result. But even the 1 in a million accidents, like the Marshal Graham Beveridge, who died at the 2001 Australian Grand Prix after a tyre flew through a gap in the fence just a centimetre wider than itself, led to reforms in how marshals are positioned, how big gaps in fences can be, how strongly tyres are tethered to the cars. The FIA does not shrug at even the 1 in a million catastrophes. I can't say what will happen next, and I implore fans and onlookers to be patient and respect the findings of the FIA. Safety improvements benefit everyone, not only improving the chances of keeping drivers relatively uninjured, but allowing them to race hard at the limit as they want to and we want to see. I commend the race and TV directors for their rapid response, stopping the race, diverting the cameras, withholding replays immediately. The unfolding situation was handled with respect and should be appreciated. I know it's a tricky thing waiting for information, as fans do have a genuine connection to the drivers we watch, and the wait can be excruciating. But through an ongoing emergency, information should be kept private until the facts are confirmed and those closest to the people involved are kept informed. Hubert was a fine person and an exciting up-and-coming driver. What happened was a tragedy. No one should expect to live to only 22, whether they are a star of the future or just a regular everyday person you see on the bus. We should send peace and strength to the young drivers, his friends and colleagues who raced beside Anthoine, who will have to process what happened to find their own particular mental strength. Particularly to Juan Manuel Correa, who will be going through a great deal of physical recovery and an immense amount of mental recovery to find the headspace to stay strong and move forward. And may they all find that.